We're not here. Please take a seat if you have gotten your food. If you're still being learned, carry on. Hi. Can you all hear me, Joe? Can you hear me? Go louder. Go louder. Can you hear me now? John Roberts, can you hear me? Jono, can you hear me? Louder. How about now? Not too loud for you in the front? Okay. Wow, thanks. Thank you all again for coming this evening, for braving the cold. Thankfully, the snow held off a little bit. What did I want to say? We know that time is precious. So thank you for spending maybe 2.5 hours with us this evening. Again, if we do run late, I apologize. Feel free to get up and leave if you need to. But it is looking like we'll probably go a little bit past 8. Before we get started, I want to offer a collective land noticing. This is a bit of an interactive, engaging piece, so you'll know when you can engage. We acknowledge that the land on which we're meeting this evening, the land on which we live, laugh, love, farm, eat, dance, and work, is the unceded territory of the Abenaki. Known as Indokana, the Dawn Land, this land on which we're gathered this evening has provided nourishment, habitat, and recreation for humans and non-humans since time immemorial. We are being called to be in relation with this land, Indokana. I invite you to name what you've noticed recently, either last night or today on your drive here to the base of Deerleap Mountain. Last night, for example, I saw the full beaver moon. She lit up the entire sky, even with the really heavy, dark, stormy snow clouds. It was quite magnificent, knowing that those clouds were going to drop some snow on us, and yet the sky was still super bright. That was a really cool thing to see. Does anybody have any other noticings about the land that they've acknowledged in the last 24 hours? Susan?
The pine trees, the very, very tippy top are just loaded with those.
The pine trees are loaded with cones with a tippy top.
Snowflakes and Lincoln.
Snowflakes in Lincoln on your drive over. Bert?
Oh, 2 nights of snow in Brandon.
2 nights of snow in Brandon, that's right. Brandon represent. Anybody else from Brandon here? We're all happy over here. Anyone else have anything feeling called to share?
Herd of cattle mowing my lawn this morning.
A herd of cattle mowing Fred's lawn this morning. There's lawn left to mow. Great, well, thank you. Let this not just be a set of words, but a commitment to action to be in relation with the land and acknowledge the political struggle of Indigenous people in asserting their sovereignty and human rights here on Turtle Island and around the world. I encourage you to ask, how can we collectively go beyond the printed word and move into this feeling of being in relation? And how does it inspire us to action? How do we lend our power and privilege to create something different? Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Corcoran, the chair of ACORN's board and one of the co-founders about 15 years ago. Jonathan's going to also welcome you to this evening's event.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Minifactory. Before we go any further, a big shout out to V Smiley. Thank you, V, for hosting us in this beautiful space again. So, I'd also like to thank all of you for braving the dark and joining us for our 15th ACORN annual meeting. Let's see. Well, I'm Johnny Corcoran, and like Lindsay said, I'm the chair of the ACORN Board of Directors, and I've been involved with the organization since the founding of our nonprofit in 2009. But before we get too far along, I'd like to introduce you to the members of our 9-person working board and recognize the passion, the commitment, and the skills gifted in service to our work of growing local food and agriculture in the Champlain Valley, our beautiful home. We'll start with the longest serving board member and then end with our newest member. When I call your name, please kindly stand up and remain standing until everybody has been introduced. So to start with our longest serving member, yes, she's rolling her eyes, Susan Smiley. He's ACORN's vice chair. No, it would be great if you could stand up, just so we can all be standing. Emily, I don't know where you went. Oh, back there. Emily Landenberger, she's an ACORN secretary. Neely Jennings, ACORN's treasurer. And our most recent members of the last couple of years, Claire Contreras. Sarah Keck. Harley Fjell. Great event. Kristen Blodgett. All right. And most recently, Nora Brown. I want to thank you all for helping guide and grow ACORN into its adolescent years and beyond into a great oak tree that will nourish everyone in our community. Thank you. ACORN has come a long way. This work requires great patience. For example, the seed for the food hub was initially planted all the way back in 2010, and it finally sprouted in 2022, when favorable conditions allowed. This evening, you're going to hear about how far ACORN has come, our successes, our challenges, the lessons we've learned. And then we'll hear from a panel of local farmers reporting on their experiences of farming at the forefront of climate change. So without further ado, the great, brilliant executive director of ACORN, Lindsay Burke.
Thank you, Jonathan. I realized I didn't introduce myself, so I'm glad Jonathan introduced me. Okay, so we've already covered the agenda. The presentation portion of the evening is only a small part of it, maybe about a half an hour. We'll cover all of the amazing highlights and work we did this year, what we're looking forward to next year. Then we'll have the panel with farmers talking about farming on the forefront of climate change, which is I'm sure why many of you came. And then we'll have some time for Q&A and conversation afterwards. Please feel free to keep eating, drinking, be merry. There's raffle tickets in the back. And enjoy yourselves. Again, for those who weren't here earlier, the bathrooms are in the back corner over there. So for those of you who are new to ACORN, ACORN's mission, welcome. And ACORN's mission is to promote the growth and health of local food and agriculture in Vermont's Champlain Valley by providing support to our farmers and food producers, engaging in food education, and ensuring access to healthy food for all members of our community. That's a huge mission statement. We are a small nonprofit. We have 9 members on the board who you just were introduced to. There's 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee and a couple of contractors that we employ throughout the year. We see ourselves as a catalyst and incubator for new initiatives, and we are the operator of Addison County's only food hub. We also have an e-distribution network of just under 5,000 people. So these are the programs on how we try to achieve our mission. We'll hear more about the Pharmacy Food is Medicine program in just a little bit. The Local Food and Farm Guide is one of our keystone programs that really connects consumers directly with farmers. And there's a stack of them in the back by the front door by Samantha. If you don't have one already, please take one. And we printed our 13th guide this year. The Tour de Farms is our largest fundraiser. It brings about 500 bike riders through the pastoral landscapes of Shoreham, which is where we went this year, and Orwell. And it's another way for folks to connect directly with the people who grow our food. Farm to School is one of our big initiatives. We're trying to get some more local food into public schools and Middlebury College. This is something we've been working on since I started in 2015. The Farmer Climate Network launched this year, and this is to create a cohort of any folks looking to have some peer-to-peer sharing, some socialization, being in community with other folks growing food in this really trying time. Cultivating Connections is our monthly newsletter where you get a local news source. We don't spam you. It's really once a month. So if you don't get that already, you can sign up on our website. And then the online market and ACORN Food Hub, you'll hear more about from Jess, and that's really you'll see it's emerging as one of our largest programs. We couldn't do this work without our community partners. I'm not going to read all these names of nonprofits, state organizations, businesses. This is really how we're able to do the work. We don't do this work in a vacuum. Food touches so many different parts of our lives, and we really we work with so many different people around the community. So if you see your organization or your business out there, thank you so much for the time and effort you put into building this community. What's an annual meeting without some numbers? So here we've got a 5-year snapshot. I really wanted to focus on the growth since before COVID. Before COVID, we didn't have any grants. We were self-funded through the Tour de Farms, the guide, and our annual appeal. Then 2020 hit, we couldn't do the guide, we couldn't do the Tour de Farms. We realized that an online market was something that might be helpful. We started writing grants. Then we realized a food hub, a physical infrastructure would also be very helpful, not just a digital marketplace. And then you can see the trajectory where we've gone with grants and fundraising to support the food hub. And then there's some deferred revenue for next year that most of that is going to go to a van and some staff time for farm to school work. This is where the money comes from and where it goes, broken down by project. So you can see that most of our budget is going to the food hub. And you can also see that the tour de farms and the guide are offsetting the costs of our general funds. Pharmacy is pretty much a wash. What comes in for pharmacy goes back out to just buying those CSA shares and paying those farmers. But the food hub is very much supported by grants at this point in time. And we also have a commitment to inclusivity. We wrote a statement of inclusivity last year. We put it on our website, and we have all farms that we onboard to the online market, to the tour de farms, and to the guide sign it. Because we realize that it's not just about local food, it's also about making food just and inclusive. And we are continuing our education and knowledge and unlearning around this, and this is just a constant journey that we are committed to. All right, so celebrating 5 years of pharmacy food as medicine program. I think there's a few farmers in the room that source food to pharmacy in this room. Silas and Jill, would you like to raise your hands? Don't be shy, okay, back corner. Thank you so much, guys, for being here tonight and for growing some amazing food. If you want to go to the next slide. So pharmacy is a free CSA share for folks who are experiencing food insecurity and or diet-related illness. The bulk of our participants are referred by their doctors, but we also realize not everyone goes to a doctor. So we also get referrals from school nurses, from the Hope Food Shelf, who also purchases shares. Word of mouth, if a neighbor has heard about it and wants to come, we have funding that allows for non-referrals for medical practices. But the bulk do come referred by the Porter practice and Village Health, and then also You First from the Department of Health. We source from 4 local organic farms. We had 100 families this year receive shares, is the largest we've gotten so far, and we extended the season to 15 weeks from 12 weeks. And we were able to calculate about 14,000 pounds of food went to about 312 people. Along with the food shares, we also do educational newsletters and recipes and samples, because we learned that not everyone knows what the food is in the share. So we really want to make it as robust of a program as possible, so people understand how to use the food, can taste the food, enjoy the food, and really expand their understanding of local food. This is information that comes from our survey. We do a pre and post survey. You can see the geographic distribution. The bulk of people do live in Middlebury, and we are able to reach the surrounding counties with our new van that we got earlier this year. For those of you who were at our annual meeting last year, we were asking for a van. We got a van donated, and it's enabled us to do about 20% of the homes needed home distribution, home delivery. We also distribute food to folks in Chittenden and Rutland counties, and then even across the lake. Those families come to us, we're not going to them. 85% of participants reported they noticed an increase in their fruit and vegetable consumption during the program, and 78% of participants indicated their confidence in cooking increased during the program. 2 really good things that we like to see. This just helps paint the picture of what the program is. So you see the tasty treats, the samples on the left that Lila made. Where's Lila? In the middle. And Marlo. Marlo is our intern this summer. So they're taking the crops that are in the bags, coming up with recipes that are budget friendly, easy to use, don't need a food processor, don't need a blender, and then showing people that they might actually like beets, they might actually like eggplant if it's cooked appropriately. And then we can't do it without volunteers. I know Maggie's in the room. Maggie's one of our fantastic volunteers this year. And then you see it's really first quality produce. It's not seconds, it's not thirds. This is the most beautiful organic produce that you can get. So a few testimonials, because this is not just about numbers, it's also about the community connection that's being created, and people feeling welcomed and feeling part of the community, and really just having this really amazing sense of knowing that people are there for them. So in the first quote, I'm only going to read the first one. We had more and better quality vegetables with more variety than we would have otherwise had. That led to more imaginative meals, and we felt cared for. Enjoyed the weekly connection, and using food that was from local farmers was a gift to us. It was special. Now I'm going to hand the mic over to Jess Perks, our ACORN Food Hub manager. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lindsay.
I'm Jess. I'm the manager of the ACORN Food Hub. I joined the ACORN last summer and got to work outfitting the warehouse facility that we share with CBOEO. It's Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. We share a warehouse in Exchange Street with CBOEO, and it's in that space that we were able to open up our ACORN Food Hub last summer. And this October, we celebrated our first year operating and offering 4 services to support farmers and food producers in Vermont Champlain Valley. And so tonight, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to. But first, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what a food hub is. So a food hub is a business or an organization that is working with food producers at various scales to increase their access to new markets, whether they're wholesale, institutional, or retail markets. And the organization actively manages the work to aggregate, market, and distribute those food products. And so what we are doing at the ACORN Food Hub is by no means new. And actually, we've been able to tap into an existing network of food hubs in the state that already existed. But we are filling a gap and providing services where they're needed in Addison County. And so, to further ACORN's mission to build a more vibrant and thriving local food community, we've identified these goals that inform the implementation of the ACORN Food Hub. And a food hub can do a lot of different things. Primarily, through the food hub, we hope to boost producer income by increasing their access to new markets. We also hope to increase the community's access to local food. Increased access to local food in the community, so many benefits, and so many people in the community can benefit from a food hub that's in their town. Actually, the list is so long, we had to put it on our t-shirt so we wouldn't be The food hub also works to increase the connection and cohesion of the community by getting people together in the same space and to understand each other's needs and share stories. By streamlining distribution and getting products centralized in one facility before going out on a truck and to a customer, we've been able to reduce the carbon footprint of the local food economy. We can also increase the trust and confidence between producers and buyers. And the ACORN Food Hub works to increase young farmers and increasingly challenging climate to grow food and access land by offering supportive resources so they can have a farm business. And so with those goals in mind and 2 years of research behind us, we opened up the Food Hub with these 4 services. So in the space, we offer storage, refrigerated, frozen, and dry. We also offer cross-docking, which is a distribution jargon term, which means that we hold products for a little bit of time, maybe 2 days, so another distributor's truck can come pick them up and take those products further afield. We discovered that it is this simple thing of having a strategically placed refrigerator that could make or break a small business's opportunity to access wider markets as far as Boston and New York. And we've been able to do that in our space. We also are doing our own distribution. We deliver orders placed on the online market, which I'll talk about in a second. And we've been exploring moving food from Middlebury to Burlington. And we've also partnered with the Rutland Vermont Farmers Food Center to move Rutland area products into Middlebury and beyond. And last but not least, we're doing sales and marketing. So our online market is the backbone of our work. And on that market, we are able to list products for over 50 local food producers of all kinds so they can access new markets. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But first, I wanted to do a little photo recap of the last year and highlight some particular milestones that we've celebrated since we moved into the warehouse last summer. So we share this warehouse space on Exchange Street with CBOEO, and last July we purchased some essential pieces of infrastructure so we could open up with those 4 services I mentioned: coolers, shelving, pallet racking, rolling carts to make it easy on us. And by fall, we were able to launch all 4 of our services and celebrate with a grand opening. In the fall, we had increasing engagement from customers. New producers were onboarded, more customers came online, and our first schools joined instead of purchasing on the online market. And by the spring, we were enjoying even more sales and connecting with our community in deeper ways by hosting gatherings that connected producers and buyers, community partners like the Middlebury College and the Viva El Support Collective. And in the spring of 2023, we were also formally invited to join the Greater Vermont Food Hub Network. That recognition meant that our work was being seen, and we had a seat at the big kids table, and the other food hubs are going to take us seriously. And we were able to gain resources and support and legitimacy for our work. This summer, we invited Lila to join the team, and we expanded our team capacity and our ability to serve even more producers and more customers. We enjoyed even more sales. Retailers and distributors signed up and purchased from us regularly. Last fall, at this annual meeting, we've been open for 2 months and we had $1,600 in sales. And I said that, it's like embarrassing to think about now. And we were proud of that number. This summer, we were doing twice that in a week. So sales are picking up. We even got local tomatoes into Middlebury A&W. This fall, we received funding to get more local food into 4 school districts. And in October, we celebrated our 1-year anniversary of doing this work and kicked off the Farmer Climate Network project with a Halloween-themed party in the warehouse. We'll be doing it again next year. And then most recently, we were awarded the New England Food Vision Prize, a big grant so we can invest more staff time to strengthening our farm to school dimension of work and purchase a new, large, refrigerated delivery vehicle. Exciting stuff. So here we are, having tons of fun while doing this work. It certainly has its share of challenges, but we had some really big orders, a lot of beautiful food, and a lot of happy faces inside the warehouse this season. And so I wanted to circle back to the online market a bit, because this is such a big part of the work we do. And this online market single-handedly brings us so much closer to achieving those goals I mentioned in the beginning. Our online market, if you're wondering, is a one-stop shop online purchasing platform for local food products. So we worked with about 50 small and mid-sized producers this season, in this past year. Everything from veggies to meat and maple, goat milk body lotion, and herbal tea, you can find it on the online market. And we offer package sizes that can flatter any need. And something that's really cool about the online market is veggies have been really popular since the beginning. And while all of our vendors are small, and the small farms that we love to see on Vermont's working landscapes, our veggie farmers are, the vast majority are certified organic or practicing employing organic practices. Many of them are female-run farms, and many of them are young farmers. So to see that amount of money and energy going towards those small, sustainable farms, and farms that we want to see here in Vermont, is really exciting to us. And so who's buying? So we operate a wholesale bulk market, and we cater to restaurants, schools, community members, so families or individuals, like many of you in this room, that like to purchase bulk local foods, community organizations, distributors, and retailers. And our target service area is based in Addison County, and those are the producers we typically work with and the customers we like to serve with a hyper-local focus. But we've stretched a little bit and gone up into Shelburne and southern Chittenden, and have gone south into Rutland County too. This is my favorite slide. I mean, it has a big tomato, and who doesn't love a big, beautiful tomato? But also I love the number inside that tomato. That's 60,000. That's what we returned to farmers this year through the online market. So our small team of 3 people doing about 50 hours a week with all these services and projects, we're able to return this to farmers this year. And we've had a lot of other impacts too. Not only have we effectively increased market access for small and mid-sized farmers, but we strengthened the local food supply chain. And I know we're all sick of hearing about a disrupted supply chain, but we've been able to repair some of those disruptions in the supply chain and replace global products with local products, and ensure that there's always a local option available for the customers who want that. We've effectively been able to offer supportive access so our producers can tap into existing local and regional distribution networks. And what we're offering is farmer-friendly wholesale. It shouldn't be a rare thing, but it is, that farmers can set their prices with us. Many farmers are told what someone will pay for their products. We let our farmers choose. And that number on the bottom, 88%, stands out in Vermont as the highest number as the percentage of sales returning back to producers. So we're really proud of them. I always like to turn to the farmers to make sure I know I'm doing a good job. And so I turned to a new farm in town, well, a new farmer on an old farm. Dan and Elise are the new owners of Woods Market Garden in Brandon. And as a new business in town that was just starting to get its name out there, they were really grateful to have ACORN support and resources in their corner this year, so they could build up their business, but also access the convenient markets through ACORN and generate some revenue for their farm as it was getting off the ground. Another farm is Blue Ledge Farm. Hannah and Greg are here tonight. And Blue Ledge Farm is down a long dirt road, and the mainstream distributors, as I hear, don't like to go down that road with their big trucks to pick up their wonderful cheese. And so they really needed a convenient, strategically located refrigerator that I mentioned before. So their food, their cheese can make it all the way down to Boston and further beyond. And so they're able to access a critical piece of infrastructure by cross-docking in their space that addresses their distribution challenges. And by getting on another truck that's already on the road, they reduce the carbon footprint that their product travels. And lastly, the partnerships with the other food hubs in the state have always been something that we've been excited about and trying to strengthen. And this summer, we forged a really cool relationship with the Essex Food Hub on the other side of the lake. And we were able to support them when they had supply gaps. And our producers could move food from Addison County over across the lake and support their customers. And we love to see that happening. We feel like so much resilience is gained from these types of partnerships for our local food shed. And so what we're doing is catching some attention. We host a lot of different people in the space and some people of power. And we've been hosting tours and visits and been on the news and in the paper. So I think people are pretty interested in what we're doing and they like what we have to say. And so we're still thinking about how can we build this up some more. Unfortunately, we got a big grant to conduct a feasibility study to see where we can go next and how we can continue to build this food hub and build on it. A community space to gather, a commercial kitchen, a processing center, a purpose-built brick and mortar location for our food hub. Yeah, so that's where we're at now. We're starting to think about those things. Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic back to Lindsay.
Jess is so humble that she doesn't mention that she's also a farmer. So she's part-time food hub manager and full-time farmer, and I don't know how she gets it all done, but she does. So thank you, Jess. So back to the numbers. You can see we started the food hub in 2020. This is just grants, and maybe there was a few community contributions, but this is when we were 2020. We were like, oh, online market, digital space doesn't need a physical infrastructure. That didn't work. We needed a physical space. So then you can see the numbers starting to climb, and you'll see that the revenue between 2021 and 2 is higher than the expenses because of the way grants work. You get grants front loaded at the beginning of the 2 or 3 year contract, and it goes out over the course of 2 or 3 years. So that's why the 2023 is so low. We also knew we were going to be in the red this year, as we mentioned, or maybe we haven't mentioned. The food hubs all around the state are running, with even the ones who have been running for 10 years, need community philanthropy, they need grant funding and earned revenue. So this is a triple revenue stream. So ACORN expected for the food hub to be in the red this year, and we expect the food hub to be in the red for a number of years, just based on earned revenue. So we will be writing grants. We're committed to writing grants and doing community fundraising and philanthropy for the foreseeable future, as I'll get into with our next slide. We've got some notes here. Who here has heard of solidarity economy or solidarity economics? Okay, a few people in the room, cool. So this is something that I got into. There was a NOFA gathering earlier this year that was highlighting solidarity economics, and it brought in a bunch of people from around the state trying to figure out how does our work link into the solidarity economy. And a solidarity economy refers to a wide range of economic activities that aim to prioritize social profitability instead of purely financial profits. It is an economic formation which seeks to improve the quality of life of a region or community on the basis of solidarity, often through business and nonprofit endeavors. So I really see the ACORN Food Hub as being part of solidarity, a larger solidarity economy in Vermont. I went to a UVM workshop with a co-founder of Cooperative Jackson in Mississippi, Kali Akuno, and he told us to look around the room, look around to the people that you're in the room with. That's who you're going to find the solution with. So I encourage you all to look around this room. These are the people we're going to be building solutions with. On a similar note, Donut Economics is also having its day in Vermont. Kate Rayworth came and spoke digitally to a group of people at UVM just a few weeks ago with the Vermont Prosperity Project. And so I started thinking, well, how does ACORN Food Hub work in the donut economy? How many of you have heard of the donut economics? A few more people? Okay, cool. So for those who aren't familiar, the donut consists of two concentric rings. The inner ring is a social foundation to ensure that no one is left falling short on life's essentials. And then the outer ring is the ecological ceiling, which ensures that humanity does not collectively overshoot the planetary boundaries that protect Earth's life-supporting systems. So again, I'm thinking like it feels like ACORN Food Hub fits really well in these wedges in the social foundation. We touch food and health and income and work and social equity and networks. We are a network. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about donut economics, I really encourage you to read Kate Rayworth's book, watch her TED Talk, or go to the Vermont Prosperity Project website. This is the biggest cliche, think globally, act locally, but this is literally what we do at ACORN. And for those of you who are more centered around the UN framework, some of you might be, we fill 9, or we are working towards 9 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including zero hunger, good health and well-being, decent work and economic growth, sustainable cities and communities, reduced inequalities, industry, innovation and infrastructure, responsible consumption and production, climate action, and life on land. So we're really working with this global thinking, but acting super locally to see how we can affect change in our community. One last framework for the system thinkers in the room. This is the True Loops model, which was highlighted at the Farm to Plate Network about a week and a half ago, and we did some deep digging into what is this thing? So this is how do we move from a dominant system, the old paradigm, into a new system, the new paradigm, the new world that we want to go to. And I was like, well, this is making a lot of sense. We did it around so many different themes, and I wanted to tie it down into the work that we're doing at ACORN. And ACORN started as a network. We were some of the pioneers in the region trying to get together all of the local food players, whether you're producers, distributors, just local food advocates, forming a network. That helped catalyze the ACORN Food Hub, which is now the bridge in the middle where it says champions, hospicing out the old paradigm of the industrial agriculture into this new emergent system that we don't even know what it looks like yet. And then we're also in communities of practice where the ACORN Food Hub talks to other food hubs, as Jess was talking about. We have a community of practice with the other pharmacy programs on the state. So we're actively all working together locally and at a state level to really move this work forward. And I just thought this was a really cool model. If you want to look more, there's a ton of this online. I'm by no means an expert in this. I'm just learning about it myself, but I thought I would spread the word. Another concept we want to introduce is the Food Hub as a public benefit. So think about your public libraries and all the values your library has in your community. It's also supported by the state and by community philanthropy. We see a Food Hub as something similar. We create a third space for community to gather. We are a dignified place for food access programs. We are also market access for small scale food producers. All of that ties into community resilience. And if we want to have and keep our local small scale farms on our working lands, we need to invest in a food hub like we invest in our libraries. To really drive the point home, I have a quote from former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. She says, economic growth accompanied by worsening social outcomes is not success, it is failure. Turning things around requires changing the way we think, the way we act, and the way we measure success. So we are actively changing the way we think and the way we measure success, and I invite you all to do the same. So what's next for next year and beyond? We're going to keep trying to increase farm to school purchasing. We see that as one of the most equitable ways of getting local food into folks' homes, both public schools and Middlebury College. We want to expand our marketing and sales efforts into Chittenden County. We know there's a lot of buyers with that share our social values that are up in Chittenden that we haven't tapped into yet. We're going to get a new, larger van with a refrigerator unit so we can keep the cold chain, another wonky food systems term. And we're going to do our feasibility study for the future space. Shelly here is in the front row helping us with that on the architect side. Fred's here, Burr's here. We've got a really amazing community at our side. Pharmacy food is medicine. We're gonna try to maintain at least 100 shares at 15 weeks. If we get more funding and we have staff capacity, we'll try to do more and more home deliveries. We might add goat dairy as a fun thing for extra protein to go with the shares. We'll keep going with the food and farm guide, the tour of farms, the Farmer Climate Network. And how are we gonna do this? We're launching our annual appeal. As I mentioned, we really need the community to support this work. So we have a goal of raising $25,000 between now and the end of the year. You can see on the left, if you're gonna donate a chunk of change, that might be where some of the money goes. By no means do you need to donate a big chunk of change. We love monthly small donations. We have PayPal, Venmo, and checks. So if you're interested, if any of this work is resonating with you, please contribute to our annual appeal. And I have one star VIP person in the audience that's gonna share why she likes to volunteer her time and donate some money for ACORN this evening. Sarah Keck, founder of BeesWrap and ACORN board member.
Hey everyone, it's Lindsay. I am Sarah Keck, I'm the founder of BeesWrap and previous owner, and an ACORN board member for about a year and a half now. Feeding my family and myself fresh, nutritious, locally grown food has always been central to our home life. I was lucky to be able to have the resources and space to grow food for my family for a number of years, and later, when life got busier, purchased our food from local growers. Not only for my family, but also for our employees at BeesWrap. It has always been important to me to not only support our community and family's health, but to stand with our local organic and regenerative farms, as they are an essential component of our community's economy and our county's food resiliency. ACORN is doing tremendous work to support our farms through the programs you are hearing about tonight. Marketing and awareness, the creation of the Farmer Climate Network, and increased access to local foods regardless of income through the Food Hub. The ACORN Food Hub's goal to connect our farms with the community through the online market and pharmacy, our institutions such as our local schools, and distribution to farm stands, restaurants, and grocery stores is essential work to increase the distribution of the absolute best food available to our community. As the Foods Hub reach grows, demand for local food grows, supporting our farms, strengthening our local economy, increasing our food resiliency, and growing a healthier community. For all these reasons, I support the work of ACORN financially and through my time as a board member, and I would encourage all of you to join me in supporting ACORN in whatever capacity you can. Thank you for being here tonight to learn about and celebrate our local food systems.
Great, that wraps up our presentation. And thank you, Sarah, for that. While we transition between presentation and panel, we're going to do some trivia, local foods trivia. So just like pay no attention to the man behind the screen. And please go to the bathroom, buy drinks, buy dessert, finish up this beautiful food that's still here. Yeah, so I would invite the panelists to come to the front if you're not here already. And then I'm going to do some trivia. And the prizes for the trivia are honey and stickers. Are you guys into the trivia idea? Is it fun? Okay. I'm gonna name a farm and you're gonna tell me what they make or grow. All right? Smith Family Farm. All right. Olivia got it.
We're giving you. Oh wait, we really good present?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Champagne Valley.
I really.
What's another farm? What does Ice House Farm make? There might have gone in first. Somebody be loud. Be quick. Kill this crowd. All right, moving away from farms. How many years have we run the Tour de Farms? Hey, Maggie. Maggie, get the money.
There's prizes?
Okay, this one every Vermonter should know. How many gallons of maple sap?
40.
I'd
I'm
pick
running out of
one.
questions now. That went faster than I thought it would. I can come up with. Does anybody else have a fun trivia? We've got more money.
You're fine. Let me know if you need us to move. Are we?
And Russ Farm Grow. Fred got it. Fred. Thanks everyone for participating. That was fun.
Just have a car around. Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, you can get up there.
Yeah.
With final seat.
I don't know how to make that. Maybe I should not stop. Yeah.
That would be.
We like moved down to Florida, but yeah. Yeah, we love this. They're calling those up. Yeah. We're gonna transition to the next part of our meeting. I thought for sure I'd be leaving at 7. Everyone, if I can bring your attention back to the front of the room, we're going to move forward with the next portion of our presentation tonight. My name is Emily Landenberger, she, her pronouns. I'm the secretary of the board at ACORN, and I'm grateful to be here with you all tonight. As you likely know, all of you in this room probably have some pretty firsthand experience and awareness of the fact that this has been a truly difficult season for farms and communities across the state. A late hard frost, record flooding, and persistently erratic and wet conditions have made it clear that extreme weather is having an enormous impact on our state's farm, food, and community resilience. Our panelists this evening have weathered the challenges of this difficult season, and they all have pretty different experiences with how that landed for them in their farms. And they have valuable insights to share with the community in terms, when it comes to farming at the forefront of climate change. So I'd love to begin by having each of our panelists introduce themselves. I'll just pass the mic. And your farm name.
We're Matt and Olivia. We're Lower Notch Farm. We're on Lower Notch Road right here in Bristol. We do blueberries, cut flowers. Silas Doyle-Bird from Last Resort Farm. We're in Moncton, and we grow 27 different crops, a mix of berries, vegetables, hay, and maple syrup.
Hi, I'm Spencer Blackwell. I'm Elmer Farm in Middlebury, vegetable farm, probably May 28th. Something like that. Yeah, 7 acres or so of hash crops and about 15 to 20 acres that we rotate that through cover crops.
I'm Anna Jo Smith from Smith Family Farm. We farm in New Haven and we raise beef and pork.
Thank you.
So each of you here, as I mentioned, had different experiences with this challenging growing season. And while we all know that we don't want to dwell on what happened, we want to focus a lot on solutions and what we learned and what we'd like to do moving forward. I think it's helpful for folks to understand at least a snapshot of what this season was like for you all, what your challenges were, what resources you drew on during the time, what lessons you learned that you'd like to carry forward.
perhaps infrastructure changes that you'll be focused on. So don't feel the need to hit every single one of those points, but if there's a particular part of that that speaks to you or that you'd like to share about with the audience today, I'd like to just spend a moment on that and then we'll move forward to forward thinking.
Yeah, we can share a little bit about what we sort of like weathered this season. We don't want to go into like too much detail just because it's a long story, but we had like 4 major flooding events on Lower Notch Road. Our road was closed for the better part of a month throughout July and August. From our personal mailbox to our farm's mailbox, that section of the road was blown out by high velocity water coming off of Bristol cliffs. And there just wasn't enough infrastructure going under the roadways. The road wasn't built in the correct way to deal with the water capacities. So that ended up with a lot of gravel and other debris sort of wrecking part of our farm field and also clogging up our waterways downstream on the farm side. So basically we dealt with a lot of emergency excavation, field drainage, diverting water, and then towards the end of the season, some crop loss as well.
I mean, the most significant part of our business is the pick your own blueberries. So that was pretty much, it's not even doable this year. I think we harvested maybe 5% of our crop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough year.
In terms of resources you all drew upon, I understand that you know, in the aspect, we know, I think that FEMA doesn't necessarily exist to support small, local, diversified family farms and after these kinds of emergencies. So what did you do in terms of accessing funding and trying to find ways to help get the resources you needed in a timely way without a lot of barriers?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we were all crossing our fingers for FEMA, you know, so we were in a tough position in Addison County. We've been all waiting around all year and being told we were on the cusp, which we never quite got to. But luckily we did work with a couple other local organizations.
And NOFA and community funds. Yeah, those were our main ones. Then we also did like a one of my friends did crowdsourcing for us, and that was like very helpful to have the immediate funding.
And that was honestly the biggest, yeah, it's probably the biggest contributor to our relief fund. It's actually the GoFundMe, which is just amazing to see, you know, our community turn out for us in the circumstances.
Yeah, and we're like, I've been in agriculture for a long time, but we're new to our farm. This is our 2nd year, so we're just like moving into our soils and our infrastructure and our markets and all of that. So it was, yeah, I don't know how else it would have been possible to scrape by and pay down our debts this year without the community funding, because we just don't even have all of that streamlined yet. So it was like unbelievably helpful and a super blessing.
Yeah, just don't realize how important those organizations are until you really need them.
Would you be willing to share a little bit about how weather impacted your farm?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I guess I had to deal with that. We were, I guess, lucky in that we didn't flood, other than our basement, but it was minor, and we had heavier soil, so the water table was pretty high throughout the season, and we do 75 acres of hay. So that was tough, except for we got an early cutting in May, and the quality was great, and we thought we were geared up for a really good season, but it didn't turn out that way. So we were about 50% of normally what we harvest, and pretty low in terms of second cut. And then other crops, it really just depended on where things were situated for the year, but some perennials, asparagus, we had about an acre that we really weren't able to cultivate on, and it's the water was pretty high for, you know, two straight months, and so I think we'll deal with a lot of loss there. And then our summer bearing raspberries, those also got root rot, and so we'll have to replant those. So that was unfortunate. I could kind of go through a whole checklist too, I realized, so I'm trying to keep it kind of brief, but you know, it was We had difficulties with weeds and disease management, and for organic growers, our toolkit is pretty limited, and so not having, especially on heavier soil, just not being able to regularly cultivate and do timely sprays was tough. And so in terms of production, definitely a difficult year, but in terms of sales, because the overall supply, and again, there were partners that were much worse hit than us, and so it was grateful, but it did seem like there was a lot of demand. So we were grateful for that.
Yeah, we're miserable. It mostly psychologically, just you go, you plan something and it gets washed out. And you're like, oh, I'll just replant. It won't rain like that again. It just kept raining off, you all know. My farm is fairly well suited to handle such events. I have tile drainage across 30 acres of cropland, and that was I would have absolutely nothing without tile drainage. This season it would have been a total loss, I guarantee it. In fact, I was cultivating often, and tiles go perpendicular to my rows, and the crop, I could just barely drive over the crop where the tiles were, and then in between them, the crop was just this tall, so it'd just be up and up like this through my cabbages and whatnot. I have sandy soil on half the farm, clay on the other half of the farm. Both are tile drained because there's clay under all of it. The sandy soil actually performed pretty well. I wouldn't say it was a huge loss. A few things were lost over there due to when it's dry, weeds die easier than when it's not. And so I got kind of accustomed to being able to kill weeds in dry spells. And while if you never get the dry spell and you never get the kill, they never die. Then I had some of the things in the sandy soil that I lost to weeds just because I didn't have the labor to take care of them. And then the other thing that saves us is just diversity, having like so many different crops. They're kind of, no matter what, there's always winners and losers. And so for instance, if I was a lettuce farmer, I'd probably be sunk this year because lettuce just rotted for 2 months straight. But having other things that make up for that rotten lettuce that maybe burned up and it was too dry the year before, but we lost them the year before, but we get them this year, so diversity is key to surviving this stuff. It's but it's hard to see. People are like, oh, you should scale up, you should do more, well, you can't really scale up and maintain diversity, so that's something to think about, planning for the future of erratic weather. Yeah, I'll pass it.
So as far as we are raising the beef, the animals are products that didn't really change this year. It's a 2-year growth cycle for our beef. So as far as that goes, we still have our regular product there. What really impacted us was we're 100% grass fed. So pasturing was very challenging this year. We had to pull them off of what we would normally rotate through some of our lower lands because we're right on the Little Otter. So the majority of the season, we had at least 2, if not 4 inches of standing water on just about everything. Cows don't enjoy that. There's nothing there for them to eat. It doesn't smell good, so they don't want to be down there. So they spent a lot of time rotating through some of our pastures that are up on the hill. So those got slightly overgrazed this year. And then we fed a lot of our hay reserve. So luckily we had the reserve. But with that being said, like Silas had mentioned, we didn't get what we needed to put up for hay this year either. So I know our impacts market wise, what we were bringing to markets wasn't affected this year, but seeing that trickle down, we're gonna see an impact next year as far as feed, if we can feasibly keep the number of animals that we have, and what that pasture looks like this coming season, because we just don't know. It's still a frozen over lake at the moment, in a lot of it. So there's just a lot of unknowns for us right now as far as what that is gonna look like for next season. Yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate you being willing to dig back into it, like a pretty difficult chapter, and I'm excited to think about what happens moving forward. So our next two questions will focus on the types of changes that you need to make this make farming less stressful, to make the livelihood supportive of the kinds of things that you'd like to see out of your farming career. And so we'll divide that into two categories: structural changes and social changes. So we'll start with structural. What kind of structural changes do you need to make farming less stressful, more viable? What barriers exist to helping you get there? And you know, this can include things you know, like tile drainage. I think Silas mentioned that's something you wanted to add to your farm. Do you want to begin?
Yes, we would love tile drainage, please. Yeah, I mean, as Spencer talked about, you install. Yeah. Yeah, does everybody know what tile drainage is? Okay, I will pass this on to Spencer.
He knows what tile drainage. It's on my farm, tile drainage. Yeah, it used to be made out of clay, pipes that used to be made out of clay. That's why they call it tile. Right now, currently it's commonly plastic, perforated plastic pipes that same thing you would put around the foundation of a house to drain water out. Comes in big spools. I think they're 1,800 feet long, and they get fed into the. I mean, you can put it into the ground any number of ways, but the most common way right now is to use a tile plow, which is a hypodermic plow that goes 3 feet below the soil surface, and it installs this pipe. You know, and there's various different. You can spot tile, just wet spots, or you can pattern tile, which means you just cover your whole field in pattern this pipe. I did the pattern route on my, because of the way the farm was, it's wet everywhere, not just in one spot. So that prevents the groundwater from ever getting above that 3 feet. And depending on your soil type, there's different spacings you put the tile. So on my sandy soil, I put them 40 feet apart. And that's because the water drains down in an arc relative to how fast it moves horizontally through the soil. So, and on the clay part, every 20 feet. And that's 20 feet is very tight. You won't find it much tighter than that anywhere, but with high value crops like mine, it's well worth it. The cost of putting in the tile at this was 10 years ago, it's $1,000 an acre, which in 30 acres, it's a big chunk of money, but we gross $35,000 an acre every year. So it's, you know, for one, you know, we did the whole farm on what we made in 1 acre. So it's a very reasonable price when you look at it that way.
I'm really happy with my decision to pass it. I took that. I guess, yeah, and so I've talked to we have a neighboring dairy farm, the Cliffords, that do have tile drainage in 100 acres, and what he says is much better yields for corn, hay, soybeans, but also that he's noticed that not just in the rainy, high moisture periods, but also during the dry seasons, that those crops actually do better. And to hear more about the science, we'll forward you to Spencer later on. But for us, just in terms of the economics of it, I was quoted 3 years ago at 2,200 an acre. You had said 1,000. And nobody really installs tile drainage on a custom basis. I know there are a lot of dairy farms around here who have their own tile plows, but and that's something that I've talked to other farmers about exploring, but they're working 1,000-acre numbers or acres in the thousands. And I don't know what the horsepower requirements for the tile plow is, but it's much more than what we have at the farm. And there's also the issue of water quality. I know there's kind of a taboo about even talking about it. And I think that's probably the leading reason that there's no grants or subsidies available that I know of for tile drainage. But if we're going to talk about resiliency on the farm, we have to talk about tile drainage. And then the other thing, unless someone wants to add, tile drainage that I was going to talk about for infrastructure is just a controlled environment. So greenhouses, high tunnels. That's something we now have 7 30 by 72s, and really saved us.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we didn't even know this was a challenge, especially flooding would be something that was even on our horizon, especially just into our second season. And so, yeah, just looking forward, it's we're just kind of completely shifting our mindset in terms of, how we can be productive and survive for, the future moving forward. Like someone just mentioned diversification, we don't have quite as many crops as some other farms do. We bought the farm, it was just blueberries. We've just been adding flowers since last year. It's just really shifted our mindset in terms of, diversification, trying to figure out what we can add to the farm. When we bought the farm, our blueberry bushes were around 15 to 20 years old. So they're a really good age, about middle aged, with like around another 15, 20 years to go on a lot of them. So we just came into this with the idea that those are going to kind of be the backbone of our business. And now we've already experienced this summer where we realized the backbone of our business may not have always been there. It's definitely shifted the way we think. We were like blessed with really good soil in our front field where our blueberry bushes are. And we just kept thinking of ideas of ways to expand that front field. And now that this is past events have happened, we have like a backfield, which much less quality soil, but it's just elevated enough to keep it dry. So now we're like, yeah, how can we take advantage of this backfield? Like the soil is terrible. We go like compared to a glacial loam soil in front. It's just extremely rocky. We built a small garden back there last summer. It took us forever pulling rocks out all summer. We said we'd never do that again. Now we're like, oh, this is like the place to be. So now we're talking about, we have one small greenhouse. We're going to try and go through NRCS to do another one. Like you said, we're just trying to pack as many greenhouses and controlled environments as we can back there and keep moving forward.
For us, it's a look at our infrastructure. So during the summer, we run a cow calf to finish operations. So we're raising everything in-house. But that also means that summer is the peak time that we have our largest numbers. So again, us utilizing the pasture saves us a lot of infrastructure space so that we don't have to overcrowd animals. We're able to spread them out in different groups by sizes and ages and keep the moms and their calves together in a separate group. This year, that didn't happen. We were only able to run one smaller group of yearlings off on actually a neighbor's property, and then everything else kind of had to stay together. And that means, our inside facilities, they were overcrowded. They weren't forced inside, but when the whole herd goes inside, there's definitely overcrowding, safety concerns and thoughts with calves, being with that many older animals and yearlings, just some things that we logistically haven't had to deal with in a really long time. Because in the winter time, again, we're able to spread out some of those groups into different sections and utilize one of our neighbors' facilities for wintering over our yearlings also. So infrastructure for us, so it's looking at longevity of what can we do to help maintain, the numbers are kind of where we're needing to be with our business size right now. So downsizing the herd would mean we have to downsize some of the markets that we're selling at, which is not ideal. With a multi-generational transfer happening at the same time, we're kind of where we need to be, if not right at the small end of where we need to be. So we're looking into the future on not only physical building infrastructures, like adding an additional pole barn, but also redoing some of our laneways so that it's easier to get around during some of those wetter seasons. And with that, brings costs, the conversation of where can we put some of that money? Are there grants available during different avenues for some of those things? And then how is that going to reflect on our price come this coming year for consumers, for all of you guys? So kind of how the trickle effect of kind of like how all those things are going to affect the next couple of years and looking at that.
Is there anything to add about structural or infrastructure changes on your farm?
Not so much infrastructure, but in terms of the crops that did well this summer were crops that had maintained ground cover around them. So there wasn't a ton of soil splash or degradation from the heavy rains. So just to continue to do that, to try to keep everything, like never have bare soil, basically, seemed to really help. It was a big difference between things that were well mulched or had cover crops on versus things that just into fresh turn soil.
So now we'll move on to the second part of that question. What kinds of social changes are needed to create the kinds of change that you need to see in order to make a viable living thrive in this industry? So that can be, I know Joe, you mentioned pricing in your last comment. I would love to hear more on your thoughts on that. How the community changes within the social systems in our communities can help support the work that you're all doing. The support for mental health, stress, access to emergency resources, these kinds of things. So may I call on you to begin? Finish that thought. Thank you.
Yeah, so with the inputs and things that we're looking at, bottom line is we all have to be able to make it to the next year, which means we have to make sure that we're breaking even or hopefully making an income and a living off of what we're doing. So being able to have some of those conversations or understandings with consumers about why is the cost of food going up? Why are some of the products that I might have more seasonally, even though I'm a meat vendor versus, some of our vegetables, and just getting that relationship established and having those conversations, because for us, I set the price based on our break even and where we're at, as far as what our meat is, but also, you kind of have to go with what the market is at the same time. Otherwise, consumers are less often to look you up for things. But having that conversation and understanding, next year there might be increases because we did have a really rough year. There's a lot of different things happening. I'm not sure if anybody else has input on that end of things. But yeah.
I would say that the social challenges have everything to do with employee having and I'm supposed to be representing an employee tonight who couldn't be here. So I'm an employer instead. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna complain about the employees. No, just kidding. But I do find that it's really hard and harder as I get older and older from the youth that tend to become employees. To maintain a connection and to feel like, we're all in this together here doing this. It becomes more like, oh, that's the boss telling me what to do, kind of feeling on the farm. And I don't know if I have any magical solutions, but I do find that that's one of the probably biggest social risk to our farm is to be able to maintain workers that are reliable, that are there all the time. And, you know, as our society is becoming more and more equality interested, everybody wants to have their rights, which, you know, is important to me too. But it becomes really hard to maintain a workforce and get work done when everyone's got to have a week off every other week and has appointments and all these things. And I think really, this is not to say that I don't think those things are, people should be entitled to those things. But as an owner, I am not entitled to take a week off ever, you know, until winter time as a vegetable grower. Or I could, but you know, you all wouldn't have any vegetables. I wouldn't have any money. So there's an issue there that needs to be solved, and I think that what it is that we need more and more people to work, maybe less and less, but we need the knowledge to be in more hands so that we can have more people that come and know what they're doing, know how to weed, know how to, you know, bend over, and you know, get the job done, because we're not going to have food if we're just going to rely on high school kids, who, by the way, are awesome, because they don't expect much, and I don't expect much out of them. High school, they're great. They come and they do whatever they have to do to get through the day and to get the job done. And I don't expect them to want to take over the farm or to have any more responsibility. Some of them do. I actually have one high school kid who's been moving for 4 years. And seems to be like he might stay another 4. But, and it's all passive.
Yeah, again, we're only in our 2nd year, and we are set up as primarily a pick your own farm, so we do get to interact with a lot of our customers, they get to interact with our property, our farm, and so social changes, I feel like, I don't know, I feel a lot more supported here than in other countries and other states that I farmed. I feel like a deep sense of like people understanding struggles, even this year, with like barely any explanation from our end, like just people willing to lend a hand. We do struggle a bit as well with employment. I think a lot of people do, but overall, I feel like very understood socially. I think if anything, it's like if there's another natural disaster, acquiring federal funding, like how it's allocated, is extremely complicated and inefficient, and it leaves certain sections of states, you know, it leaves certain people out. So that is the only thing, like socially, I think I would have to say that we're still challenged with.
I guess I could maybe just piggybacking off of you, Spencer, in terms of labor. That's a challenge that I think every single farmer has, and I think the biggest obstacle is being able to pay enough, and that is definitely impacted by the price arena. And I mean, this might be a rabbit hole, but for my wish list of tile drainage, and then affordable housing, and then personally affordable and flexible childcare, probably you too.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think the challenges of not being able to pay enough to get a sustainable team, and so it does it becomes a low wage job that we are I feel like a big part of it for the local team is they are learning. And so there is a compensation in knowledge. But I think until we can compete with other industries, that's always going to be a challenge.
I appreciate you all mentioning those sort of overlapping things of childcare and housing and how these issues intersect and how, these things don't happen in isolation, that all of these challenges are really deeply overlapping. I'm glad that we touched on that. So now I'd like to spend just the last few moments. I realize we're getting close to our wrap up time, but I'd like to have a little bit of time for Q&A. So if anybody has a question that they'd like to ask of someone on our panel, please feel free to raise your hand. And unfortunately, the mic won't reach all the way to the back, so just project. Susan?
Could you say, each of you, where your farms are, what town, even what road they're on, and again, what you produce?
We again are Lower Notch Farm. We are at 1908 Lower Notch Road, just here in Bristol, about 5 minutes away. And we do pick your blueberries, and cut flowers.
I'm from Last Resort Farm in Moncton, Tyler Bridge Road. And the crops that we grow are 27, I guess they could be with Spencer 29. We're kind of and it's a mix of berries, vegetables, maple syrup, and hay.
Elmer Farm, I'm Spencer Blackwell at Elmer Farm, in East Middlebury, around Route 116, about half-mile north of the village. Grow vegetables, we're certified organic, 30 different crops.
Smith Family Farm in New Haven. We're on Lime Kiln Road. So we kind of sit in that New Haven, Ferrisburg, Moncton pocket. And we raise beef, pork, and meat birds.
I was wondering if you farm ducks at all. Sounds like that might be an opportunity.
We have 5 ducks and they're my daughters.
Oh.
John?
Can you imagine a structure, a situation where you could pay what you think would be a fair wage, a living wage to farm workers? Can you imagine them?
I'll repeat the question in case you all didn't hear it in the back. So John wonders, can you imagine a scenario in which you could pay a living wage to a farm worker?
We first define what that is. A fair living wage.
Asking you to define what that means to you, the idea of a livable wage.
What does it mean to you?
I see the amount of energy that people use to do things recreationally. And they pay money to do that. Maybe there could be some encouragement to use your recreational energy productively.
For us right now, I run the farm with my grandfather, so we're transitioning. We have a long way to go before we're in a position where we can have a livable wage for an employee. But realistically, we're in a position where sooner rather than later, we're probably going to need to have an employee, given the fact that I farm with my grandfather. So, with age comes some limited activities. So that's just something that we're thinking about. But yeah, a fair livable wage is pretty out there for us as far as we're going to need employees way before we can obtain that number. We're not quite there yet for even like having 2 families operate the farm. So.
I guess I asked that question in terms of what is a fair livable wage, but it's really just I think it's in order to build a team that's going to come back consistently each year. It's just compared to other industries, and so a lot of our team generally comes from the Chittenden County area, and so we're competing like with medicine world and just a lot of industries that pay is higher. We have one employee through the H2A program, and so that wage is defined through the adverse wage, which was $16.95, and I think this next year is going to go up to 17 something, and I can't remember. And also we're required to pay for his travel to and from Jamaica, and then housing, and I also provide him with a vehicle as well. So that definitely adds up. And then so we ranged this season from 15 to 21 an hour. And so I don't know how to answer that question. Can I foresee us paying more? Each year we've paid more, and the question is, what does that exceed inflation, cost of living? I haven't looked at that calculator recently, but yeah, that's definitely, we aspire to do that.
I think one thing you do that we do pay pretty well for the season, but you're not paying that year round. And in order to have employees that can come back year to year, can build a family on a vegetable farm, you've got to be able to pay at least $22 an hour year round to live on, I think, right? And I can't foresee that right now without running an operation that's much larger than I want to manage or can manage. Without bringing on more people that need more money than that. It's like a never-ending cycle. So, yeah.
A few hands. I'll start with Hannah.
I know that Silas, I think you have been through a farm transfer, and it sounds like the Smith Family Farm is in the process. And I just want to hear a little bit about what that process has been like for you to take over your family farm. So congratulations, first of all, and I also just want to hear about what that's been like.
It wasn't without its difficulties, but it's worked out really great. So this was my sixth season taking over the farm, and we have a lease to own, 15-year lease to own set in place, and all the legal work and technical advice was actually provided to us through farm viability. So anyone who's going through or thinking about going through a transition, highly recommend you reach out to those folks.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. Farm Viability is a great program. They've helped us with a lot of things, and we're still currently kind of in transition working with them. We officially signed papers, and I became a owning partner in 21. So in January is when our agreement kicked in. So again, it's very new, and we are in a partnership, and it's not quite 50-50 yet. So, but we treat each other as so in how we do all of our decision making. It's definitely challenging. We have a generation in between that's missing. So I farm with my grandfather. So sometimes, just getting him to understand that I'm not 5 years old anymore sometimes can be a challenge. And so I often come with a very much numbers approach, whereas he is not that approach. So, just understanding how to work better with each other in that aspect, because it's every day we're working together and managing everything. So yeah, it constantly has its challenges, but I wouldn't change what we're doing either. And I'm able to bring up my daughter while we're doing it also at home with us. So that's made a big impact on our family.
I forgot to give a plug to the Vermont Land Trust too, because did do an OPEB option to purchase at agricultural value, and so without them, it would have been really difficult.
Saw Jono's hand go up, that's what.
Yeah, so see all the demographics from like 50, 100 years ago where so much of the population were farmers and how that has dwindled over time to where we are now. Yet we live in a great agricultural state. What do you think of the future? Were you encouraged by those that work on the farm, and do they talk to you and say, yeah, I want to own a farm someday, or how does that picture look?
Donna, would you mind rephrasing the question?
What do you think of the future of farming, given, you know, we had a challenging season? How do things look maybe within the next few years? How do you see the future?
I think something that we really think about is, well, first of all, I am one of those people who worked on farms for a long time and said I want to be a farmer, so now that's us. And hopefully that will be one of our employees one day. We're focusing on keeping live roots in the soil, covering our soil, taking care of our soil as best as possible so that we can diversify our farm. Yeah, we have all sorts of business plans in place for the next couple of years. Just trying out different things and seeing what feels right for us. We feel extremely blessed to have even acquired our farm for how hard it is to find affordable housing, affordable properties in Vermont. It was all super word of mouth. And when we purchased our farm, we actually built a yurt on it and lived in the yurt for 2 years. And ended up last year buying our neighbor's house. So we feel extremely blessed to be farming in this area. And we're not completely discouraged out of the game yet.
Yeah, that's a really good question. In terms of the future, I think I do well, the dairy industry is so important to you know, the agriculture, of course, in Vermont, but small farms too, because people don't always think about that in terms of the infrastructure of equipment. The equipment dealers wouldn't be around without them, or it would be much more expensive, and seed, fertilizer, etc. So in a lot of ways, we are kind of dependent on how they're doing. I think if we get more seasons like we did, maybe growing rice, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, right now, still feeling pretty optimistic. Kind of have to, because our roots are set pretty deep at this point. But yeah, hopefully this year was an anomaly. I think yeah, in terms of people here, how you could help participate would be, if you can afford it, to get a weather station and then tie that to a weather app. I prefer Weather Undergrounds, but that would just help increase the overall amount of data and hopefully increase the forecast, because that's especially for hay, but I mean, every crop is dependent on the weather, but just having a good forecast is everything.
I'm optimistic about the future. We live in a pretty awesome farming area, and I think it's actually probably going to get easier to farm here in some ways, relative to some of the other areas that are experiencing no water. I think we are blessed with a lot of water, and grass is an incredible resource that I think is understated. I mean, there's a lot of interest in non-animal foods, but grass is really pretty much the ultimate solar collector, and used through an animal to create food for people. We grow great grass here for the most part. Sometimes it's a little hard to harvest it, but it's there, not dried up and gone. So I think we live in a great spot for farming in Vermont, and we're gonna be as well suited as any other place, which will keep us, on the, like a prosperous farming community.
Yeah, I feel like everyone else has kind of summed up a lot of my thoughts we are very fortunate to live where we do here in Vermont and have really good, for the most part, growing conditions compared to a lot of other farmers and ranchers out in like the Midwest or the South, with extreme droughts or not productive grasslands and things like that. So I think it only bodes to our benefit that we have that naturally available to us here. So as long as we can keep that going, I think that Vermonters and Vermont farmers sit in a very good position in the future to continue to diversify, continue to grow, and expand our knowledge and what we can do to stay sustainable and keep that available to future generations. So.
I know we're a little bit over our time, but I do want to have at least one more question. I see Al with his hand up.
Well, you're acquainted. So Silas, I was just gonna push you a little bit. You brought up the land trust, so I don't want to make this sound self-serving, but obviously 3 of the properties are in land trust, which means it can't be subdivided. And you were talking about transition. I'm just curious of your thoughts, and Joe or Spencer, how do you think about, or do you even think about the fact that there's this development restriction on your properties going forward? I'd be curious to have your thoughts on it.
We definitely have thought about it, not in the sense of the development or sale into like housing infrastructure, that type of conversation. But keeping that, we've been having the conversation of farm infrastructure and different locations and things like that as to what, Al knows what we've conserved on our farm. It's pretty much our farm minus a very small portion. So there's always the conversations of what's the best way to continue our operation and grow our infrastructure that also serves to benefit our business and our land and the things that we've conserved. So for us, it's not necessarily the conversation of development in the sense of like housing and things like that, but the development of how we can better serve our land and our farm at the same time, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question now, but.
My whole reason to become a farmer is to make farmland more productive than housing, or farming than for housing. So I'm more financially productive. So I'm building a business on my farm that hopefully I'll be able to sell for more than I could sell for houses. That's my hope, my mission. See, maybe it's pie in the sky, but that's also my only option. So I'll go with it.
Like I said, our roots are, or my roots are pretty deep with the farm. It does feel, like there's a little bit of a sacrifice there in terms of giving up the development rights, but as Spencer said, it feels like a good investment. One for the community, but also self-serving. This ties into the question about the future, and there's a huge lack of housing, but there are a lot of houses going up, at least in our area in Moncton and beyond, and it has seemed like overall sales, at least direct sales, so on the farm stand, farmers markets have increased, and yeah, the population will continue to go up, seems like. And so, from that perspective, farming feels like a good investment.
One gentleman who's been so patient, so I know I said one more question, but if the fella in the red hat would mind asking his question, I feel like that was brief enough, we can work it in. Sure.
I had a question about labor, I guess sort of geared for you, Spencer. There's no easy fix to labor, I think it's a cultural issue, it's a culture of working hard, wanting to work hard, and wanting to being okay with not working for a great wage and wanting to do farm work. So I'm curious what you've seen over the years as leading to this reversal in that type of culture, and what might be a remedy to reviving that type of culture to a stronger, more diverse workforce.
Thanks, for the opportunity to expand on my further points, about recreation. And so, right now, I think people are becoming, who knows, they're just like, there's so many options of fun things to do. Like, when I was a kid, there was nothing better to do than follow the farmer around on the tractor and watch his chopper, you know? It's like, that was fun, that's the only fun we could have. But there's so many fun things to do right now, so many recreational fun things kids have opportunities to do. I think there's just less and less that are drawn to following choppers around. But I do think that there's a potential for a culture to develop at somewhat of a educational, institutional level, where sports teams could become farm teams. You could have knowledge about how to grow crops. You could be the kale team. You learn everything there is about kale, and you go around the farms and you help farmers do their kale work, whatever it is, you know. And that would help with this institutional knowledge that right now is really privatized among every individual farm. We all know how to grow our own kale just right. But as soon as we're gone, the next person that comes and takes, they're going to figure out how to grow their kale just right. And it's different, probably, than the way you did it. And I don't know, I don't really see like evolution of knowledge working really well. Just chop it off and start fresh every time, you know? So if we had an institution that could carry knowledge through, inspire outdoor activity, in a safe place where you're not going to be forced to do it for 40 hours a week. I don't know, maybe that's an option.
That makes me think of ACORN's farming worker bees that we recently, during our gathering on Exchange Street, put up a big board and asked farmers to make note of what they need help with on their farm. And throughout the winter months, at least once a month, we'll host a farming worker bee gathering. And so those of you who do want to farm and want to know a little more about, you know, how to gather this institutional knowledge from these farmers that have been doing this for a long time, and try your hand at this work, that's a good opportunity to engage with that. So stay tuned for ACORN's news, probably, or we'll announce those, yeah. All right, well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate all of you being brave enough to sit up here and take questions from the group, and to talk about some of the hard things this year and some of the hopeful things moving forward. We really appreciate what you do, and I appreciate all of you being so patient, given that we went over our time. So thanks for coming tonight. If you want to say anything to close.
Thank you again to Minifactory and their amazing team. And can the farmers in the room please stand up? Because there's quite a few of you here. I know some have left, but there's a number of you, and Emily is also a farmer. She didn't introduce herself as one. So thank you all for the work you do. That wraps us up. So have a safe drive home. Mingle if you want, but I think we should probably start making moves. And sign up for our newsletter online if you don't already. And I promise to not spam you too much. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
That was my train. I said, I was hard times.
Yeah. Gotta look out there.